So today we're going to be talking about how to grow on social media this past year. These are kind of things that I picked up on. I am obviously not a huge influencer. I'm still kind of building my brand, but I'm hoping that these things that I've listed out, statistically, they've worked out for me. So hopefully you can apply them to your own brands and see some growth slowly over time to get where you guys want to be. So this is advice from an introvert that sucks at social media. So I used to be pretty shy, and I still kind of am. I had a hard time speaking, and I talk about this kind of a lot, but I was never really good at social media. It was kind of one of the things that has always been holding me back up until recently. And I was kind of upset with myself because I felt like I was doing everything right, but I was just really uncomfortable with social media. I didn't like posting about my social life and like things that were happening in my life. So basically, because of that, my personal brand suffered. So in 2013, which is when I started my Twitter account, and that's kind of my main platform currently, up to 2020, I had about 2,000 followers. So it took 7 years to get to 2,000. Was obviously very happy with that growth, but for the most part, it was one of those things that was always pulling me back, right? And up until recently, so this past year, almost exactly, is when I started my personal brand and my new journey into all of this. Compared to last time, the past 7 years, going up to 2,000, this past year, we're almost at 10,000 now. So this is what I'm going to be talking about. So what changed? And to put it really simply, the biggest factor that went into that really rapid growth is I decided to get serious. And that sounds maybe a little bit corny, so I want to expand on that idea a little bit more. And these are the main two things we're going to cover today. So when I decided to get serious, this is what I did. I looked at my initial mistakes, and then I came up with solutions and obviously some tips that I learned along the way that I'm going to share with you. So these are our two focuses for today. The first thing I want to cover is going to be those initial mistakes, because in order to create solutions, you have to analyze and discover the problem first. So I'm going to list out these main mistakes that I've noticed, and you guys let me know if you can maybe relate to those things if you are kind of introverted like I used to be in the past, right? So these are the main things. My biggest initial mistakes: consistency, personality, and engagement. And I'll expand on these ideas a little bit, starting with consistency. So let me know if this relates to you guys, but what happened for me in the past, the biggest issue, I would have bursts of motivation that would slowly disappear over time. I would randomly get this excitement and be like, okay, I want to post on social media. I have like a ton of content, I have a ton of ideas, and then maybe 2 months pass by and I'm posting nothing. Like, I have no content, I have no idea what to talk about, and I kind of just fade into the background for those next 2 months until I again get a random burst of energy and I'm like, okay, I'm back on social media, I'm making my return, and I'm going to start posting more, and the whole cycle continues, right? Mistake number 2, personality. So as a designer, I used to be very much like, and I still sort of am, a perfectionist where I want everything to be a certain way. And on my Twitter profile especially, I had figured that having a clean profile would be more appealing to maybe like clients or people viewing my page. So when I think of clean profile, as a designer, I was just focused on like, I want to make sure that my work, my design work, is the only thing on my Twitter, so that when people scroll through, they only see the design work. Like, they really only get to see the finished product of what I do, right? Because I thought clients would see it and it would be more efficient for them. That was kind of my main thought process. That was my second mistake, was my personal brand and social media presence had no personality, right? And the third mistake is that I thought that having just quality work in itself would be able to lead me to success. Just If I only focus on design and I post that work, I post those finished products, eventually it's going to pick up. People are going to start seeing it. And that's how I would grow on Twitter. And that was kind of my third biggest mistake. It sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. There are people who have work that is so undeniably good that they will always see success. But in my case, you know, I was still learning, I was still in school, and the work itself really wasn't enough to carry my presence on social media. So those were the three big mistakes: consistency, personality, engagement, right? So that part's easy. Once you identify what those mistakes are, and if you can relate to any of those, or if they've happened to you personally, those types of mistakes or experiences, this is basically my solution to all of those things and how I basically approach them. So going back to this idea of me getting serious. 1 year ago, I decided to start my personal brand. I had finished school. I pretty much told myself, like, I'm going to focus only on this brand and my social media presence for the next 365 days, and I'm going to see where I can take it. So I decided to put my brand as a priority rather than school. And that's kind of what I mean by getting serious. So if we go back to these mistakes initially, consistency, personality, and engagement, here were the ways that I decided to approach those things. And we'll just go the same format one at a time, right? So starting with consistency, if I go back to this problem, so advice from an introvert that sucks at social media. So I used to suck at social media, right? And the main problem was that I would get those bursts of motivation and I would disappear over time. And the main problem was, like, I didn't really like sharing, like, about my life or what was going on. I didn't like sharing that type of stuff. So this is what I decided to do to approach that. So I prioritize steady consistency over these bursts of posts, right? And it's basically just as easy as it sounds, but when we talk about, like, the algorithm of how social media works, it's really, like, just this simple. So social platforms favor consistent daily posts. Basically what I mean by that is, like, it's pretty much what it sounds. So like Twitter, YouTube, really anything, they will prioritize people who just post daily. So people that post every day, you'll often see them more in your feed. The biggest thing that I did for myself was I started saving posts. So, like, going back to this idea, I used to be very introverted and I would get these bursts of, like, energy. I decided when I started my brand, I was just going to roll things out a little bit slowly, like, or slower than usual, right? And I decided I'm just gonna start saving those. I'm gonna start stretching that out. So instead of posting 4 times a day, my goal, and I still stick to this today, is to post one thing every single day. It doesn't really matter what it is. Like, that's up to me to decide, and that's kind of what I mean by creating a daily schedule. But, like, it's literally what it sounds like. So I'll still get bursts of motivation, and I'll start thinking of things that I want to tweet out. Things like lessons, design knowledge, like information, graphics, events that are going on in my life. I will hold on to those and I'll literally save them, like, to a notepad or your drafts or whatever you use to organize that information. And you just hold on to them and decide each day when you're going to post those things. And it's kind of up to you to decide. So, like, for example, Mondays, I try to post things that are really casual, because Monday, you know, I'm sure people don't want to be, like, thinking really hard. It's the start of the week. Like, they might have work or school. Like, so I try to post things that are kind of lighthearted. You kind of want to read the room that way with what is your audience going to, like, what mood are they going to be in on a certain day, and you create your schedule and you save the posts that you have lined up for those specific days, right? There's 2 main benefits to doing this, and the most important one is that I can take breaks and not feel like I'm falling behind. So I don't know if this has happened with any of you, but if you feel guilty after going on vacation because you're, like, in your head, you think to yourself, I'm gonna fall behind. This isn't good for my brand if I take this vacation because people are going to not see my content anymore, right? and I'm just gonna fall off the face of the earth. And you shouldn't have to feel that way. I very much so urge you, if you are pretty introverted and you can't come up with content consistently, like myself, I can't do that, you know, you just save those bursts of motivation and spread them out. Because that feeling of, if I want to take a break, like tomorrow, I might take the day off, but I've still got a post lined up for that day. So I can just stay active on social media and then relax at the same time. And for my mental health, that's like huge, right? Number two, something that is maybe a little bit underrated for doing something like this type of method, is that if you wait to post something, it'll reveal the quality of the content. There's a lot of tweets that I have saved up that I look at now and I think to myself, man, I'm like so glad that I did not post that, because it's really like corny, or it's kind of lame. Maybe it doesn't fit my brand anymore. Like, I'll look back at it and I'll get to thank myself because I gave it a day or two to just sit in a notepad, and then I got to think and redecide if I even wanted to post it in the first place. So that way you can really funnel the quality of what you're posting and the content that you're putting out. You can funnel that information and really just release the stuff that is going to be the most useful for building your brand building on social media, right? And this was probably the biggest factor in why my brand is the way that it is now, is because of that consistency and posting every single day. I've pretty much posted every day. I think I might have missed one or two every single day for this past 361 days. So almost a full year, I've posted just one piece of content, and it doesn't take a lot, you know? So that's kind of the main thing there. Number two, personality. So this was another mistake that I made, going back to what that mistake was. So I used to think that a clean profile would be more appealing, not only to clients, but just people visiting my page. They would get to see all my work. It would look really, really visually, you know, it would draw them in. That was my initial thinking, and it was one of my biggest mistakes. So I would suggest that if you're thinking this way, and this is where I started to pivot in my personal brand, is save that cleanliness, save that visual appeal to your actual portfolio or your website, because your social media shouldn't apply as being your portfolio like it used to be for me. I used to not have a portfolio. I used to only post things on Twitter, and if people wanted to see my work, they had to visit my Twitter page, and that was the only way. But if you're really concerned about clients finding you that way on your Twitter page, I would really suggest that you just save all of that for a portfolio, make it as clean as you want, as simple as you want, and let your personality live in your social media, right? I kind of thought of this when I was thinking about this idea of personality on social media, and if you were to only post your design work and nothing else, just design work, that's all you had on your Twitter page was the things that you worked on. If you're in a town that only has libraries, it only has like information and nothing else, you're going to get bored really quickly. That's not a town that you can live in, right? So it's visually appealing when you have just your work on your social media, but it would be the same as you owning a city or town that only has one type of building, you know? You need to have like restaurants, shops, entertainment. Your brand on social media should feel like kind of a busy city. The main thing that helped me with that kind of analogy is when I decided to create a brand with a specific purpose. So this helped guide me along that path of how am I going to start putting personality into my social media so that it doesn't just feel like a library, you know? I can have it be a bunch of different things. And if you focus on kind of specifics, so I started focusing on the things that I like, which is teaching, design, you know, education. That was my purpose for my brand, and it helped carry me along this like, okay, how am I going to show myself off on social media? You know, who am I going to be creating this brand for? Which in my case, I think is people mostly in gaming that are around my age, maybe a little bit younger, right? So I did a little bit of studying, I created this brand, and it gave me this roadmap for how I'm going to make my personality appeal to that type of audience, right? And what type of content am I going to post? One of the big things that was really big for me in doing that, in creating that brand, especially when you study your audience, is that I took off this filter of being super professional. I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but way back in the day, I used to think that being professional was like so cool. Like you could pretty much only be a hard ass on Twitter, and you had to, you know, you couldn't make jokes. You had to be super serious and show that like you are only serious about your work and you have no time for games, right? And I took that filter off because I realized it's almost more unappealing because it turns people away. There's not really no interest in them following you or supporting you if you're not able to engage with them, right? So the main thing is I had this conflict in my head eventually of being really professional versus just being myself, because a part of me is really professional, but a part of me, like, if you guys see me on Twitter, like, I like making stupid jokes every once in a while. Like, a big part of my brand is this dumb expression that I make where I always look angry, and I kind of embraced that, and I just started doing whatever I felt like. So I studied my brand, I created my brand knowing who my audience was, so you have to gauge what's appropriate, but I didn't let professionalism just tie me in to this, like, I have to be this type of person. Another really big thing is modeling yourself after the personalities of other people. So that was one of the big reasons why I felt like I needed to be professional, was because I would see designers that I looked up to and I would say to myself like, oh, they're so professional, you know, I really want to be like that person. Eventually I realized that that's their brand, is that they act that way, and it's not who I am, right? It doesn't make sense to apply someone else's personality into your brand because your brand is based off of your personality. So I stopped focusing on comparing myself to this person who's big on social media or this person who's big on social media, because I realized like there's not really one specific way. You don't have to be professional. You don't have to be goofy. You could be successful doing whichever way you want if it fits the audience that you're appealing towards. So that's the big thing on personality. And the most important part is just, I would say, to not compare yourself and be natural, because that's who you are. And if you create a brand and grow with a personality that isn't really yours, it's a really big factor in how you feel emotionally and where your mental state will be when you do become successful. So if you climb to the top of the ladder and you become extremely successful, but the entire way you were faking your personality and who you were, it's honestly really likely that you'll quit eventually, right? You'll give up because you'll have an identity crisis and be like, this isn't who I am. I don't want to be this person anymore. So just start now, just being natural, right? That's the big thing on personality. Engagement. This is one that's maybe a little bit cooler because you can actually analyze these numbers. So I used to think that work alone would lead me to success. If I just posted quality work and that's all I did, people would start seeing it, more people would start seeing it, and I would grow that way. And it's a way to grow. It's good to have, like, post that work. If it's quality, people will get attached to it. But the main thing is, for most people, it's not going to be enough just creating work. And the main thing is that when you don't engage with other people, you're reaching out into this void, right? You're just posting content hoping that someone will eventually see it. And it's really difficult to grow that way. I talk about this a lot, so that's kind of why, I mean, I'm sure everyone watching this now knows this. So like, engage with the community, but like, you actually have to do it. So you hear people say this a lot. Interact with the community, engage with the community, but like, what does that mean? How do you actually do that? The main thing is that genuine connection is always going to be your safest investment. It'll be your best bet for growing, because a lot of people will see this, engage with the community, you know, become a part of the community, and they'll see it as an invitation to promote themselves to a community, you know? Like, this is why you should follow me, this is why you should watch my content, is for this reason. Like, here's my content, watch it. As obvious as it seems, like, we see it every single day. Like, we constantly see people doing that, but genuine connection's always going to be the best for you when you don't expect to get a return from it. You're not asking people to see your content. You're making it so that if you're basically making people come to you instead of you reaching out to them first, right? So like, how do you do that? Because that's obviously easier said than done. The main thing, right, is just don't spam other people with your work. I would say there's never really a reason for you to ever promote your work to someone unless it's for like a collaboration or if it's for something very specific. But for the most part, if you're spam messaging 100 people with your content, it's very likely that none of them will watch it or really care about it in the first place, right? In order to do this whole engagement thing that everyone's talking about, I would say some of the biggest pieces are to make sure you're not in this alone. So to find people, you know, friends, I think I talk about, communities, friend groups, etc. There's a ton of ways you can do it. So like, you can join big communities. Like if there's an influencer that you really like and they have a Discord, like joining those types of communities, or just small friend groups. You know, the main thing is to just make sure you're not alone in this, because the whole point of this is to branch out and grow and meet new people, right? And you can never do that if it's just you. I talk about this all the time, but it's the biggest way to engage with a community and to grow with people is to support and grow with the people that you relate to. So a big mistake that people make on social media is they'll reach out to this massive influencer with millions of followers, right? And they'll reach out to them just expecting that they're going to be friends immediately off the bat. But what worked for me is that you have to grow with people that are kind of in the same boat as you, people that you can relate to. So when I started out and I was really new, I didn't reach out to influencers. Like, I just found my friend group and I grew with them. They met more people, I met more people. Some of them ended up becoming industry leaders, and now I know those industry leaders because I grew with them, right? Rather than reaching out to the industry leaders first and hoping that you make a connection with them. This is one of the cool things. If we talk about like viewing analytics and seeing if this stuff actually works, this idea of engaging with the community, I have an example here. If you can see this, and maybe you don't need to, but it's basically just a screenshot I took of something that I tweeted out regarding this stream. So every week I tweet out what I'm going to be streaming about the next day. I always look at the impressions of those tweets because it's important to gauge those numbers. This is why engagement is something that you can really measure, because you can look at numbers and see what people like, see what people don't like. This tweet, within that 24 hours, around, or 12 hours or whatever, around 4,000 impressions, right? Compared to, this is my idea of engaging with people. So I posted this stupid joke on my boss's Twitter, Sesso. He had basically made a graphic and I just made a joke. And the impressions for this one is over 6,000, right? So it's more than what I was posting individually. And that's kind of what I mean by having genuine engagement with people. So like, I'm just joking around, I'm just having fun on Twitter, on social media, right? And the main thing to take away from that is I'm not promoting anything, I'm not telling people to watch my content, but people are seeing my name, they're seeing my face, and they're seeing that attachment to the person. And let's say that there's another fan of Sesso and they somehow see me on that tweet. So I've made an impression on them, and then they view my work. And that's kind of what I mean by have people come to you rather than you reaching out to them. You do not need to promote who you are, because if you're tweeting on someone's page, like someone who has a big influence, your main goal is to just build a community with those types of people, right? Because those are people that you relate to. If people follow Sesso and I follow Sesso, then that means we probably have a couple things in common, right? So that's one of the big things that I've learned this past year. Probably the biggest thing when it comes to engagement is just interacting with other people's tweets, starting conversations, making jokes. That's why I said personality is really important, because doing these things, the numbers are literally there. Like statistically, you can see these things kind of just doing their thing, just working their magic. And all you have to do is be yourself and just have fun, be a part of a community. That's literally the only thing you have to do, right? So one of the big takeaways for this that I'm sure all of you know is that people know your intentions. So it's very important to be as genuine as possible. Like I said, have fun, make jokes, be yourself. Just that act of engaging with people will get impressions for you. And if those people that are seeing your jokes, your kind of like banter on social media, if they just stumble on your page and then they find that they like your content, that's like a genuine connection right there, rather than you forcing them or like literally feeding them your content hoping that like you can reel them in, right? Those are the main things that I picked up on how to grow on social media this past year. So we looked at initial mistakes and then solutions and tips. If you guys have any questions, let me know. For anyone watching on YouTube, I'm live on Twitch right now, twitch.tv at Nowack Design, and we do a Q&A after these presentations. So if you want to stop by, I'm live every Saturday. Otherwise, that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you later.